Say hi, Kathy. Okay, here we go as we're about to board the plane.
We're on our way to Ireland.
We started our epic journey in Dulles Airport and couldn't resist getting some celebrity photos before we departed. Our wonderful Aer Lingus flight took us over the Atlantic to the Emerald Isle, which I tried to get some shots of at sunrise. And then we landed here in Dublin City. Let's not talk about what the exchange rate was. We picked up our cute little Fiat, which I volunteered to drive first. Did I mention?
Just check out what side the driver's seat is on. Look at that. This is gonna be weird.
We headed straight down to the charming town of Naas. Where we had our first real Irish breakfast, complete with eggs, beans, toast, and
Our first cup of tea.
just sitting there along the road to Kilkenny, we came across one of the hundreds of ruins that still stand over the country. Wow.
Here are some pastures of Ireland. They're divided by all these hedges.
Along the way, we saw signs for a local cave.
Oral folklore asserts the cave to be a gateway to the world of the dead.
How could we resist? We had quite an interesting character for our tour guide.
What you see around you is all limestone. The support block, softer limestone, quite easily worn away with the flow of the river.
The Mines of Moria.
And just remember, if you're ever asked, you're off the bat.
Okay, we got a new director in town. Danny's driving the car. Oh my God, we're on the wrong side of the road. You're gonna kill somebody. What side am I supposed to be on? Now we're going around a traffic circle the wrong way.
Oh my God. What? Did I go the wrong way?
Here's Danny going the wrong way.
Once we did find the right way, we ended up here in Kilkenny. The first thing we noticed in Kilkenny was how detailed their street signs were. Then we hiked down to Kilkenny Castle, which was once the seat of the Butler family. We couldn't use cameras inside the restored castle, but outside wasn't too shabby either. That evening, we checked into our first B&B, Butler Court. It was lovely. That night, we ventured out around Kilkenny. The next morning, we wandered around a bit.
Kilkenny in the morning. It's as quaint as it ever could be.
I began my search for books on Celtic folklore.
Kilkenny. There's a giant head in Kilkenny. Hello.
Then we visited the other major site in Kilkenny, St. Canice's Cathedral. We felt a deep connection to one of the curators of this cathedral because his last name was also Bell. Then, as we headed out of Kilkenny, we came across a ruin of an old fort. Neat. Our next big destination was the Rock of Cashel, another ruin, this time of a formidable castle. On our way south, we headed through the city of Cork.
Cork, the Baltimore of the Ireland.
Even though Mom and Dad laughed at me, I was excited about this because Cork was featured in season 2 of the NBC show Heroes. Cool. And then we continued south until we arrived in the wonderful coastal town of Kinsale. We checked into our next B&B, the Seagull House, which was run by the same woman who tended the pub down the street. We had already had a big day, so we crashed for a while. But we still had enough in us to go exploring a little bit. The next morning we poked around Kinsale some more.
There's my new Irish hat right there. I look Irish. I'm totally Irish. Look, you can put it on backwards. I look like an Irish punk. Our band's gonna become an Irish punk band.
Yeah, this one's for the workers who toil night and day, by hand and by brain.
I got more books on folklore in Kinsale.
Just a book over there when I got
Mom bought me Ronin. This is my new Selkie in Kinsale. He's got a little black tail. He's okay with Mom's driving. He's okay. He's okay.
We then drove out into the country to go see some more sights. But, of course, Dad had to practice first. And then we discovered the Stone Circle. Not as massive as Stonehenge, but more intact.
In the Stone Circle.
And there are apparently dozens of these around Ireland.
There's a dining room, and there's a lot of seats and little huts. And then they would go over there and do their pagan rituals. Oh.
I also had a chance to get a close-up view of the famous Irish bramble. On our way back to town, we happened across another fascinating ruin. This time, it was an old church. Upon further inspection, we found that the entire ruin had also been used as a graveyard for generations.
So here's the friary. It just goes smack dab out into the town. There's our little town of wherever we are.
And then, on our way to an old fort, which turned out to be closed anyway, we discovered we had a flat tire. I won't name any names, but someone had hit a pothole earlier in the day.
Today, Danny becomes a man.
It didn't matter though, I took care of it. As I mentioned, we had been on our way to see Fort Charles, but we found it closed. We still got some nice views of Kinsale though.
the moat. And obviously you can tell from these markings here that it had sharks
Well, that's
with
only access, so you can only have like 3 men across going.
it had sharks with freaking laser beams attached to their heads right down here. Had freaking laser beams. Whoa! Ah! Ah! You should see how that looks when I'm spinning and it's behind. It's funny. Elk Ridge.
When we got back into town, we just happened to run into a father and son who turned out to be from Towson, Maryland. So, of course, we had to have dinner together. The next day, we found that we couldn't return a flat tire to Hertz, so we had to get it replaced. That's when we also found out that it was easier to roll it down the street to the garage than to carry it. We did some more shopping and returned to the nifty store where Mom had bought my pet seal. Then we took a drive to the shore in hopes of seeing some picturesque Irish coastline.
Cliffs of South Ireland.
Even though this area had been made into a golf course, I'd still say our plan was a success. As we drove on, we were absolutely astounded to see surfers, of all people. It was 10 degrees. Mind you, that's 10 degrees Celsius. Needless to say, we really felt like wusses after that. And remember, a beach is called a strand. Our next adventure along the way occurred when we happened upon an old farm castle along the side of the road. I'm not sure if the cows were historic or not. We eventually made it to our next planned destination, Dingle, a beautiful little town on the west coast.
Dingle, a tiny town with tiny streets. Here's our next B&B on the Friday in Dingle. It's cute. A nice little view outside. Hello, Dingle.
Thank you, Rick. Great place. We are in Dingle.
It's lovely. Here's our B&B from the outside right here. Like the little garden.
Once we settled down, we ventured out along the harbor for dinner. There was a very nice woman from Chicago staying in our B&B.
Julie from Chicago.
Room number 3.
Mom from home.
Our host there was Eileen, and her husband Tim did an archaeological bus tour of the surrounding peninsula which we partook of just after our
Got a full Irish breakfast.
Tide is well out at the moment, spring tides at the moment.
Yes, there are palm trees, even in Ireland. This is a historic house that is now a girls' school. And this is Tim, telling us about some more standing rock structures. This is a small island that is called the Sleeping Giant for obvious reasons. There's a good amount of local folklore on this giant. We also found out that the Dingle Peninsula was where a good amount of Ryan's Daughter and Far and Away were filmed.
This is just. Now, this is what I thought the coast of Ireland was like.
And it is.
And it is.
We saw several prehistoric settlements and such. And this is an early stone dwelling built with no mortar. It's perfectly weighted to stand freely. Oh yeah, we saw a lot of sheep along the way.
There's more little lambs down there now.
After our drive, we came back to Dingle and poked around town. In the Dingle record shop, I met a wonderful lady, Maz, who talked some folklore with me and sold me some of her art and music. You've heard some of it on this video.
So these are all the books I bought in Ireland.
That night, we went to a few local pubs. and we saw a live Celtic group, though it was too dark to get any good footage. The next morning, Dad played his horn for our hosts before we headed out. And then we began our journey back to Dublin. Along the way, we saw some pretty spectacular landscape. We stopped in a few other interesting towns along the way and saw some more historic sites.
I said it's just awesome that we're touching stone that was built, a building that was built in 1240, 1230s, and it's still being standing and being used today.
This last leg of our trip brought us back to where we started, Dublin City.
The view from our last B&B, Dublin City.
We just hung loose that night and ordered Chinese takeout. On our last day, we had a few hours to see Dublin before we had to catch our flight. It was Easter Sunday, so much of the city was closed, but we were still able to see a few sights.
So here's the building where the Book of Kells is, but we can't get in because it doesn't open till noon. So that was fun. This is what we really came to Dublin for. Oh, those kind of knockers. Okay.
As all good things must come to an end, we had to head to the Dublin airport to catch our flight. But rest assured, we'll be back.